Mario Kart World, what a game you are. I still love this game and play it daily, but I do admit that the problems of it do show. I've talked about this before on the channel, but then Nintendo came out and seemingly fixed everything with an update, or at least that's how it's being reported. On July 29th, version 1.2.0 was released. An update that addressed a lot of problems many people had, a lot of quality of life issues, and of course, the biggest ticket item possible, the last bullet point, increased the frequency of lap-type courses appearing in the selection when choosing the next course in Versus Race and Wireless Races. This is a huge deal. For those of you who don't know, Mario Kart World is comprised of 30 racetracks. However, there are interconnected tracks between these racetracks that also count as race courses. Actually, there's over 200 of them. 202, I think, to be exact. And some of them are really fun. A lot of them are a little boring, but when you do one of these tracks, you start at one race course, do the intermission track, and then do one lap at the destination 3-lap course. It's an alright mechanic, and you'll do a lot of them in Grand Prix, but the problem is frequency. When playing online, a lot of people prefer to do the 3-lap tracks. Frankly, I think most people would like to only do the 3-lap tracks. However, that's not really an option. Once a race starts, everybody gets 3 choices and 1 random. And more often than not, your 3 choices are intermission tracks. I think this just comes down to amount. There's 30 regular 3-lap tracks and 202 intermissions. If you're weighing them all the same, you're very rarely going to see one of those normal courses. Now, this did have a solution when the game first came out. If you picked random, it would randomly pick one of the 3-lap courses. And there was a time when this was fine, this was good enough. If you were playing at a lobby with enough people who knew how the game functioned, pretty much everybody would pick random and you would always get that 3-lap track. Now, I'm not one of the people that hates the intermission courses. We'll get into why I actually do like them and why this update makes them better, but I understand not wanting to do them, let alone not wanting to do them for every race. I've always said I think the perfect solution here is just give us 4 choices. 2 3-lap courses and 2 intermission courses every time. And that way, if a good intermission comes up, you can still pick that. And it still gives everybody the option to play how they want. But for a while, everybody picked random. And then, after a few weeks of the game being out, Nintendo updated the game so the random selection actually has a much higher chance to only pick one of the already prompted 3 choices, which are more often than not just intermission courses. This made it incredibly rare to actually play a 3-lap course, and pretty much killed a lot of the online activity. Don't get me wrong, people are still playing the game, it's the new Mario Kart, but it went from getting into a full lobby within 10 seconds to finding lobbies with 12 to 15 people at best. However, then this update came out. Increase the frequency of lap-type courses appearing in the selection when choosing the next course. To everyone, that sounded like it fixed the issue. Now you can select your 3-lap courses and you can do them again. But in practice, this increase is not that drastic. When playing before the update, I would say maybe 1 in 5 races, you would get an option to select a 3-lap course. Now it seems like it's more like 1 in 3, which is an improvement, but when it's still up to a vote and some people will still pick intermission or random, there's a chance you're gonna go a few races without getting that 3-lap race. Now, like I said, I've still been playing online and I've felt this, and I do think that the increased frequency is nice, but it's still not enough. Like I said, I think the best case scenario here is just giving us 2 3-lap courses, 2 intermission tracks, and 1 random option. 5 total choices. That way, everybody's happy, everybody can select what they want, and if you want to be in a lobby that's only doing 3 laps and a bunch of intermissions keep getting picked, leave the lobby and try again. It's as simple as that. But I want to talk about these intermission tracks while I'm here, because I think, as is, they can be improved a lot without any major changes. Because the main problem everyone's having with these intermission tracks isn't that they only want to do 3 laps, it's that driving on the intermission tracks is a little boring. The whole point of this game is that there's an incredible tricking system with wall riding and grinding and multi-layered tricks and all these things you can do with your kart. It's the most expressive driving experience I've ever played. And in interviews, Nintendo said, "We realized that driving from point A to point B may have been boring, So we wanted to introduce this tricking system so you can do things as you're going, but then you play the game, and majority of the intermission tracks have no walls to ride and no rails to grind, besides the occasional guardrail along the side of the road you're driving on. So like, what's the deal? If the whole point was that the intermission courses would have extra tricking so that you could interact with the course in a way that you usually can't while doing it, where's the tricking? They forgot that part. And look, would my perfect solution for this be make these intermissions filled with tricking opportunities? Yes, but it is admittedly a little late for that. If they update the game and add a whole bunch of this stuff, it would drastically change the world map and drastically change the free roam and just make it's too late for that. So I have a proposed solution for the intermission tracks, and that's just to make us go faster on them. This game already presents differing speeds for differing roads. There are some roads in Bowser's Castle, and I believe the water in Starview Peak, and a couple other locations where when you're driving on them, you have a constant boost which makes you faster. And that's awesome, and it's thrilling, and it makes these parts really intense and interesting. Why not utilize them for the intermission tracks? There's several long straightaways where all we're doing is dodging traffic. This would be so much more intense and so much more fun if we were going at this near 200cc speed. Frankly, adding 200cc but just for the intermission sections, I think would make them so much more fun. Doing these at a fast pace would be way more interesting. And part of this update does address that, because there's one bullet point that really gets no explanation that is, frankly, I think, the most important part of this update. And I'm only going to put it on this bullet point because it goes nowhere else, and that's the last bullet point of fixed issues. Several other issues have been addressed to improve the gameplay experience, which doesn't tell you anything, and it might not even be relating to this, but they did change drastically how the game drives. Before this update, whenever you would do any sort of airtime, you would lose a little bit of momentum when you landed. However, because more often than not you're doing a trick, that would counteract it. You would do your trick, get a boost, and yes, you'd slow down a bit, but you would get that boost. But because of this, there were a lot of sections in the game where it was just frankly faster to drive in a straight line rather than doing a bunch of tricks, because when you land, you lose that little bit of speed. And since you're already losing speed by getting airtime, it would just keep compounding. This update fixes that, because after this update, you no longer lose any speed when landing on a flat surface. You just get the boost. It is so much more worthwhile to trick now. It is so... Now, again, it's not like game-changingly a minute faster, insane. But as far as like time trials, world records, and regular races go, it is so much more worthwhile to do your tricks, because you will be shaving seconds off of each race by tricking as much as possible, which does make these intermission sections more fun. For example, the bridge. This bridge is almost so cool, because there's these up paths where you can do so many tricks and get in the glider and bounce off walls and all of this stuff. But it was, admittedly, by far faster to just drive in a straight line and avoid traffic, which is boring. It's boring. But now, taking the center grind rail, bouncing off buses, and maybe not the top path, but some of the other side paths are so much more viable and fast now, which makes these intermission tracks more fun. I'll be honest, I've been playing the online every day. I'm past 8,000 rank and I'm getting better, but I'm having a lot of fun, even though I'm doing a lot of intermission tracks. And for one, a lot of the intermission tracks are actually really good, but for two, being able to trick all the time makes it so much more engaging to actually race. I haven't been bagging at all. I know a lot of people's main complaint with the intermissions is that bagging is the best and only strategy, apparently, that you have to get the most broken item and then keep it till the very end and use it at the last second or else you're gonna lose. But at least in my rank, in the 8,000s, that's not true. And there's still very often that lightning right before the end of the race that everyone says you have to bag to beat. But like, for a lot of these intermissions, if you just race good and normally and trick a bunch and use your items smart, you can pretty regularly secure a top 6 spot. And like, look, am I winning every single race? No, but playing in a fun and competitive way, I'm pretty regularly getting 6th to 2nd, and I don't have to bag, hang back, collect coins, and make a mad dash. And with 24 racers, 5th place is pretty damn good. So look, I totally understand that we should have the choice for 3-lap races versus intermissions. But in the meantime, this change alone is such a good step forward, and I genuinely think just playing the game normally and racing in a fun and competitive way, you can still pretty regularly, if your skill is there, get 5th to higher even without bagging. Sure, you might not guarantee first every single time, but you'll still win races. It's crazy to me that some people are saying that the only viable strategy is you have to bag no matter what if you want to always get first. And it's like, look, it's 24 racers. I'm okay if I get third if I get to have fun. I don't know, I'm gonna get called a Nintendo shill for this take, but I think the intermissions are fun as is. I think if we were a little faster, they'd be genuinely peak gameplay, but as is, I think this game is the best Mario Kart game we've ever gotten. I want them to improve it. I want more choices, but as is, this game's peak. I don't know what to say. But in the meantime, if you want to hear my thoughts on Donkey Kong Bonanza, you gotta wait till next week, because it's a long game. But last week I covered the Pokemon Direct, and you can find that video right here. But until next time, as always, you've been watching RyeTwost. Of all the YouTube channels, it's the second one. Stay toasty, slices.